Have you ever heard of the infamous INFJ door slam? It's when someone with the INFJ personality type abruptly cuts a person out of their life, often
Goodbye.
permanently. But here's the thing, long before that final door slam happens, there's an earlier silent step, an emotional cutoff that most people never see coming. In this deep dive, you're going to learn exactly what that emotional cut entails, why INFJs feel compelled to do it, and what's really going on in an INFJ's mind leading up to the door slam. You'll discover the psychological and even neuroscientific reasons behind this behavior, hear a breakdown of how it unfolds, and find out what we can learn from it. This isn't just pop psychology. We'll back it up with research, typology theory, and real anecdotes. So you'll walk away with a clearer understanding of one of the most mysterious relationship moves out there. Stay tuned, because by the end of this, you'll not only grasp why INFJs sometimes cut people off so dramatically, but also how to recognize the subtle warning signs beforehand, and even how to prevent reaching that breaking point in the first place. Let's get started. Understanding the INFJ door slam. To understand the emotional cut, we first need to understand the INFJ door slam itself. INFJ is one of the 16 Myers-Briggs personality types, often called the counselor, known for being compassionate, loyal, and patient friends. INFJs are usually the ones with off-the-charts empathy and endless willingness to listen and support others. In other words, they're the last people you'd expect to coldly shut someone out. And yet that's exactly what the door slam is. When an INFJ walks away from a relationship and completely shuts down contact after being pushed too far, it's as if one day they're your closest confidant and the next day you're icily on the outside with no explanation. Once the door is slammed, the INFJ's warmth is replaced by a wall of silence, and it can be extremely hard to win them back. Now, some might think this reaction is overdramatic or comes out of nowhere, but INFJs themselves will tell you it's anything but sudden. In fact, by the time an INFJ finally slams the door, they've likely endured months or even years of hurt, disappointment, or exhaustion from that person. One clinician-reviewed description puts it plainly: the INFJ has been feeling hurt, left out, or taken advantage of for a long time. The problem has been brewing beneath the surface until they finally decide they've had enough. What outsiders see as a sudden cutoff is actually the last step of a much longer journey. So what leads an empathetic INFJ to such a drastic final measure? The short answer: self-preservation. INFJs give a lot in relationships, sometimes too much. But when they reach a point of intolerable pain or toxicity, the door slam is like a survival mechanism. It's the INFJ's way of saying, no more, I can't bear this any longer. To fully appreciate this, we need to rewind a bit and look at everything that happens before the door is slammed, including that critical emotional cutoff phase. The slow burn, why INFJs reach a breaking point. INFJs aren't quick to abandon relationships. On the contrary, they often stick around far longer than most would, thanks to their loyalty and high tolerance for others' flaws. Part of the issue is that INFJs absolutely hate conflict. They're private and conflict averse, sometimes to the extreme. This means an INFJ might go weeks, months, even years without openly addressing serious problems in a relationship. Instead of confronting someone who hurt them, they often bottle up the hurt to keep the peace. They may drop hints or try to subtly improve the situation, but direct confrontation is usually a last resort. This avoidance comes from a genuine desire to maintain harmony and spare everyone's feelings, but ironically, it allows resentment and pain to quietly accumulate. Over time, this dynamic can turn an INFJ's unconditional giving into a recipe for burnout. One common scenario is the one-sided relationship. Perhaps you have an INFJ friend who's always there for you, listening to your problems, forgiving your mistakes, going out of their way to help, but you realize too late that you haven't been pulling your weight. According to personality experts, if someone takes advantage of an INFJ's kindness for too long, exhausting them without giving support back, the INFJ will eventually begin to pull back. It's usually a slow, gradual withdrawal. They'll respond more slowly to messages, excuse themselves from hangouts, or seem less emotionally available. This is the beginning of the emotional cut. Essentially, the INFJ is testing the waters of life without that person's influence, often because they feel drained and unfulfilled by a relationship that's become terribly lopsided. It's not just benign neglect that triggers this. Toxic or abusive behavior is another fast track to an INFJ's breaking point. Thanks to their caring, open nature, INFJs can inadvertently attract people with toxic traits, like narcissists or chronic manipulators. At first, the INFJ might try to understand and help this person. They might excuse hurtful behavior, thinking, they're just going through a lot. I need to be patient. As one INFJ recounted, she found herself giving a narcissistic friend endless attention and empathy, telling herself, it's fine, I can take it, I'll be the bigger person, they need my help. INFJs are so empathetic that they often justify the other person's actions to themselves, enduring little betrayals or disrespect repeatedly because they assume the other person doesn't truly mean harm. They might even blame themselves for the problems or try even harder to please the person, effectively overriding their own needs. But make no mistake, each instance of hurt is stacking up internally. The INFJ's emotional resources are not infinite. They can and do run dry. Compassion fatigue is a real phenomenon, and it perfectly describes an INFJ on the brink. Psychologists define compassion fatigue as empathy overload, leading to emotional and physical exhaustion when you care for others without adequate reciprocation or rest. If an INFJ constantly pours energy into someone who gives little back, they inch closer to a breaking point. They might start feeling quietly resentful, depressed, or anxious whenever they interact with that person, even if they don't show it openly. Often, an INFJ's own values and self-respect are on the line too. A particularly painful trigger is feeling fundamentally misunderstood or disrespected by someone they care about. INFJs are complex, introspective individuals, and being told things like you're overreacting or having their character and values unfairly questioned cuts deep. One INFJ described that if someone attacks her core values or competence, it's a major red flag that begins the door slam process unless things are resolved immediately. For a personality that thrives on authentic connection, realizing this person doesn't get me at all and they don't seem to care creates a profound sense of alienation. Up to this point, everything is happening under the surface. The INFJ hasn't slammed the door yet, but you can see the cracks forming. So what exactly happens next? How does an INFJ go from silent suffering to silently cutting someone off? In the next section, we'll explore that critical mental shift, the emotional cutoff, and the fascinating psychology behind it. We'll even look at what might be happening in the INFJ's brain when this shift occurs. Don't go anywhere. The most revealing part is coming right up. The emotional cut when an INFJ switches off inside. All the while, the INFJ is forgiving, understanding, and holding in their hurt, a threshold is approaching. Then something happens, often a final straw, or simply the slow accumulation reaching a tipping point, and the INFJ undergoes a dramatic internal shift. Many INFJs describe it as a moment where a switch flips in their mind or heart. In one instant, their entire perception of the person changes. The person who once was a beloved friend, partner, or family member suddenly feels like just a stranger, a person we used to know, as one INFJ put it. It's like the emotional coloring that made that person special and trusted is drained away, leaving a neutral image in place. This is the emotional cutoff. Psychologically, what's happening is the INFJ is severing the emotional ties before they physically sever contact. They have decided, consciously or subconsciously, that continuing to care about this person is too painful to tolerate. In family therapy terms, emotional cutoff is actually a well-known concept. It's when an individual copes with relational stress by isolating themselves emotionally or physically, avoiding sharing feelings, and rigidly disconnecting from the other person. For an INFJ, performing this cutoff is huge because their relationships are usually tied to their very identity. But in that millisecond of calculation, as one author described, the INFJ evaluates the situation one last time. Are all my exits blocked? Have I truly exhausted all chances? And if the answer is yes, their mind hits the emergency switch. What does this feel like for the INFJ? Incredibly painful, yet strangely liberating in the moment. There's often a wave of sorrow or even grief as they let go of who they thought the person was. In a nutshell, this cutting of the heartstrings hurts the INFJ deeply. Remember, they invested a lot of emotional energy in this relationship, but it also comes with a sense of numbness or indifference that immediately follows. In fact, indifference is the key sign that the emotional cut has happened. The opposite of love isn't hate, it's indifference. When an INFJ reaches the point where they truly feel nothing towards someone who used to mean the world to them, that's how you know the door is about to be slammed shut. We become suddenly indifferent and pretend they don't exist anymore. It's one of the worst things you can mentally do to another person, writes one INFJ of this experience. They note that even anger would be easier for the other person to handle. At least anger shows some passion or investment. But indifference is chilling. It's as if the INFJ's emotional system just wipes the person out of their sphere of care. The person's texts, calls, drama, none of it evokes the same reaction anymore. The empathetic INFJ who used to worry about this person day and night has emotionally checked out. This indifferent state is a kind of self-protective emotional numbness. It's the INFJ's psyche cauterizing a wound to stop the bleeding. And interestingly, it often engages a more analytical, colder side of the INFJ's personality. In Myers-Briggs terms, INFJs normally lead with feeling and intuition, but when hurt, they can fall back on their tertiary function, introverted thinking, a logical, impersonal mindset. Don't be surprised if an INFJ who's doing an emotional cut suddenly sounds detached, pragmatic, or even robotic when discussing the relationship. That's their mind's way of justifying and reinforcing the decision. This friendship isn't healthy. I've run the cost-benefit analysis of keeping them in my life, and it's not worth it. Such clinical thinking helps override their natural empathy so they can go through with the cut. In a way, the INFJ is convincing themselves that the person is no longer who they thought they were, perhaps even mentally relabeling them as a threat or just an acquaintance. It's fascinating how an INFJ's famed empathy can shut off toward the target at this point. Neuroscience gives us some clues about what INFJs might be experiencing. Research on highly sensitive persons, a group that many INFJs fall into, shows that their brains actually activate more strongly in regions related to empathy and emotion processing than less sensitive individuals. In an fMRI study, HSPs had significantly higher activation in the mirror neuron areas and the insula when viewing others' emotional expressions. In everyday life, this means an INFJ can literally feel others' joy and pain as if it were their own. It's a beautiful gift until it becomes too much. If an INFJ is overwhelmed by someone's negativity or toxicity, that same empathic brain becomes a liability, flooding them with distress. Eventually, the INFJ's mind may hit the brakes on empathy for that person as a last resort. Psychologically, it's like pulling the plug to avoid short-circuiting. Emotional cutoff, in this sense, is the INFJ's brain protecting itself from an empathy overload. There's also evidence that social pain registers much like physical pain in the brain. When an INFJ feels betrayed or chronically hurt by someone, they're not just being emotional. Their brain likely lights up in the same areas that process actual physical pain. Ongoing social pain can put the brain in a state of threat, activating stress responses. Hitting indifference is akin to the body going numb after too much pain. Studies have found that even taking a physical painkiller like Tylenol can reduce social pain feelings, highlighting how intertwined these systems are. So, when an INFJ does that cold internal switch, they might be unknowingly dulling a very real neurological pain. They've decided, often unconsciously, I refuse to hurt over this person anymore. Now, the emotional cut has happened internally. What comes next is the outward action that everyone recognizes, the actual door slam. We've now arrived at the critical moment. The INFJ has emotionally detached, but what do they do next? In the following section, we'll see how the INFJ door slam unfolds in practice, what exactly an INFJ does when they slam the door, and why it's so permanent. We'll also discuss the aftermath for both the INFJ and the slammed person, and whether there's any chance of reversing it. Plus, we'll touch on some real case insights and what can be learned from this drastic measure. Stay with us, because understanding this final step is key to grasping the full picture of the INFJ emotional experience. The door slam, point of no return. An INFJ door slam can feel like a door locked with a heavy chain. Once it's shut, it's firmly closed. When an INFJ decides to cut someone out, they truly cut them out. In practice, this often means going completely no contact without fanfare or explanation. The INFJ may stop returning calls or texts, ignore social media tags, and generally vanish from the person's life as much as possible. They might block the person's number or accounts, or if that's not possible, they'll interact in the most minimal, impersonal way. Lauren Sapala, an author and INFJ, explains that in a classic door slam, the INFJ cuts the person out of their life completely, act as if the person never existed and never played a role in their life. The door isn't just closed, it's as if the INFJ has brick and mortared the doorway behind you. From the outside, this can feel devastating and confusing. One day, you think things are okay, or maybe you knew they were tense but had no idea how close to the edge things were. Then suddenly, silence. You're left to replay memories and wonder what happened, often with zero closure. And that's exactly how the INFJ intends it at this stage. Remember, by now they've likely tried to communicate or hint at issues in gentler ways before, but those attempts didn't result in lasting change. By the time of the door slam, the INFJ generally believes that explaining themselves yet again would fall on deaf ears or even open them up to more manipulation. So they choose silence and finality as their statement. For the INFJ, carrying out the door slam is both difficult and a relief. Difficult because no matter how numb they've made themselves, they did care about this person deeply, and ending a relationship is sad. Many INFJs report feelings of grief and guilt in the aftermath. They mourn the loss of the good times and may even worry whether the other person is okay. But it's also a relief because at long last, they have boundaries. That sense of constant anxiety or dread that they felt when seeing the person's name pop up on their phone, it's gone. They've taken their power back and protected their wounded heart. As one account noted, the INFJ door slam often stems from a realization of self-worth. I should value myself and my well-being more than staying in a harmful situation. In the case of the INFJ who slammed the door on a narcissistic friend, she realized that cutting him off was the catalyst to rediscovering my self-worth.
The door slam, in her view, transformed heartache into self-love, painful but necessary.
It's important to note that when INFJs slam the door, they typically mean it to be permanent. This isn't a temporary timeout or a ploy for attention. It's the final chapter. They usually reach this point only when they feel every other option has been exhausted. Thus, once the door is locked, INFJs rarely open it again. Never, ever, ever getting back together. In practical terms, an INFJ might politely acknowledge a desperate apology or attempt at reconnection, but they won't truly let the person back into their heart unless there's an earth-shattering change. Trust, once shattered, is almost impossible to rebuild with an INFJ. They gave so many chances before. If those were wasted, the well is dry now. For a moment, let's consider what the slammed person experiences. Often they are shocked. Even if they knew the INFJ was upset, the absolute cold shoulder feels jarring. Some react with anger, others with hurt and remorse. In certain cases, this absence does make the heart grow fonder. The person realizes what they lost, and it triggers some personal reflection. But tragically, the INFJ likely won't know that because they're not around to see it, and it typically comes too late. Some people will label the INFJ as heartless or overreacting, not realizing the hell the INFJ likely went through to reach this point. As an outside observer, it's easy to say, can't anyone cut toxic people out? Why give it a special name like INFJ door slam? The difference is INFJs will endure far more hurt before cutting off than many others. Many people might drift away or set small boundaries. INFJs tend to slam a vault door and throw away the key. It's this all or nothing aspect that makes the INFJ door slam so noteworthy. Aftermath and what we can learn. Once the dust settles, an INFJ will often reflect on what happened. There can be conflicting feelings: sorrow, relief, guilt, freedom. INFJs don't enjoy slamming the door. It's usually accompanied by a period of mourning. They may replay the relationship in their mind, analyzing if they did the right thing.
Some INFJs even feel guilty for cutting someone off, wondering if they should have given yet another chance. But most come to understand that, in the end, it was a necessary act of self-care. As painful as it is, the door slam teaches the INFJ something about their own limits and the importance of boundaries. In hindsight, many INFJs realize they ignored red flags or gave too much of themselves for too long. The experience, while harsh, can be a catalyst for personal growth, learning to set boundaries earlier and to speak up about issues before they become unmanageable.
In fact, one of the biggest lessons from the INFJ door slam is about the power of healthy boundaries. Imagine if some of those limits had been set earlier, small no's, instead of one big never again. Therapists often encourage empathetic people to practice setting boundaries without guilt to avoid burnout. Communicating your needs isn't selfish. It's one of the best things you can do for yourself and your relationships, as one counselor put it. By saying no or addressing hurts in the moment, INFJs can protect their energy and well-being, preventing the slow buildup of resentment. Yes, it can be scary for conflict-averse INFJs to assert themselves, but it's far kinder than silently tolerating until a relationship implodes. If you're an INFJ, this might mean learning to voice concerns as they come, or taking breaks when you feel drained, essentially releasing pressure from the valve before the whole pipe bursts. What if you're on the other side? If you care about an INFJ and want to avoid being door slammed? The answer is both simple and challenging: reciprocity and respect. Check in on your INFJ friend or partner's needs and feelings regularly, because they might not volunteer that they're hurting. Remember that an INFJ who's always listening to you might rarely share their struggles, so make space for them to talk and truly listen when they do. Little gestures like asking, "Hey, how are you doing? What's been on your mind?" go a long way to make an INFJ feel seen and appreciated. Also, be mindful not to overstep repeatedly. Mistakes happen in any relationship, and INFJs will forgive a lot, but don't abuse their empathy. If they bring up an issue, take it seriously. Don't dismiss it as no big deal, because to them, it likely is. By showing consistent care and respect, essentially by not pushing them to their limits, you can ensure you never experience that cold door in your face. As one writer quipped, avoid the door slam by channeling an INFJ's own empathy back at them. Give as good as you receive and appreciate the rare depth of connection they offer. Of course, not every relationship with an INFJ is meant to last. Some people and personalities just clash. The INFJ door slam, for all the negativity it carries, is sometimes the only way an INFJ can break free from a truly unhealthy bond. In those cases, it's an act of survival and should be respected as such. If you've been door slammed by an INFJ and you know in your heart you consistently disrespected or hurt them, perhaps the best thing you can do is learn from it and strive to be better in future relationships. Sometimes losing an INFJ's friendship is a wake-up call. As the saying goes, you don't know what you've got till it's gone. On the INFJ's side, healing after a door slam often involves forgiving themselves and the other person internally, even if they never reconcile. With time, the initial indifference can soften into a kind of distant understanding, not letting the person back in, but not harboring hatred either. Many INFJs, after cooling off, silently wish the other person well from afar. They move on, focusing on relationships that do uplift them, and perhaps most importantly, they carry forward the lessons of honoring their own feelings. A deeper understanding of INFJ goodbyes.
The emotional cut and subsequent door slam of the INFJ is a dramatic saga, but at its core, it's a human story of boundaries, empathy, and self-preservation. We've seen that before the door ever slams, an INFJ endures a lot, absorbing hurt and pushing down conflict in the hope that things will improve. When those hopes are dashed one too many times, they initiate that profound emotional cutoff, reallocating their empathy away from someone who caused them pain. It's a heavy step that leads to the outward finality of the door slam, a move that protects the INFJ's heart but can leave others reeling. By exploring this through personal anecdotes, psychology, and even neuroscience, we uncover a few universal takeaways. First, everyone has a limit. Even the gentlest souls need to protect themselves when harmed. Second, communication and boundaries are key. Had the INFJ and the other party addressed issues earlier, the drastic ending might have been avoidable. And finally, understanding the INFJ door slam isn't about glorifying coldness. It's about recognizing the depth of an INFJ's previous warmth. It reminds us that those who are exceptionally kind can also feel exceptionally hurt. When they vanish from your life, it's not truly sudden. It's the echo of all the unheard moments leading up to that point. If you're an INFJ, I hope this helped you put feelings into words and showed that you're not alone in this pattern. And if you know an INFJ, perhaps now you have a better map of their emotional world, and you'll never have to find yourself on the other side of that closed door. Thank you for listening to this deep exploration. If you found this insightful and want to continue learning and reflecting together, consider signing up for my email list. It's completely free, and it's where I share my most personal stories, extra psychology insights, and content that doesn't always make it to the channel. By joining, you'll get to stay in touch directly, and love to have you as part of that inner circle. The sign-up link is in the description below. Thanks again for spending your time here. Take care, and remember, setting healthy boundaries isn't just okay, it's vital. Until next time.